Welcome to another episode of the Living Legends series. My guest today is a world-renowned trapper and bow hunter, author of 5 books and over 60 how-to trapping and hunting videos, eventually leading to a TV show that aired on ESPN Outdoors for 20 consecutive seasons.
My Sports Center highlight will be action-packed because I'm going to scuba dive out to the Navy carrier Roosevelt, climb into an F-14 fighter, and fly Mach speed to New Zealand where I can bungee jump from Skipper's Canyon Bridge.
He's provided us with endless hours of great hunting footage like this Alaskan moose hunt.
Try to call and move through the woods.
Alaskan bull moose. That was a nice one, man. I'm not 250 yards off the river.
Hunting exclusively with archery tackle, he has taken over 50 whitetails on video, and he has completed numerous slams, including the North American Super Slam, taking all 29 North American big game animals needed to complete that slam, all with archery tackle.
Good hit.
To accomplish a super slam, you need to shoot a whitetail deer, a mule deer, a Sitka blacktail, a Columbia blacktail, a desert cow's deer, a Rocky Mountain elk, a Thule elk, a Roosevelt elk, a bison, a pronghorn, a muskox, a mountain lion, and a mountain goat, an Alaskan moose, a Canadian moose, and a Shiraz moose, grizzly bear, polar bear, brown bear, and black bear, a barren ground caribou, mountain caribou, central barren ground caribou, a Quebec caribou, and a woodland caribou, and of course the 4 sheep, a bighorn sheep, a Dall sheep, a stone sheep, and the desert sheep. He became the first bow hunter to document all 29 Super Slam hunts on film. He is the recipient of Safari Club International's prestigious World Hunting Award, among many other awards and recognitions. He is a self-made, hard-working entrepreneur, and just like in his hunting pursuits, he's always looking for the next challenge. I found him to be an incredibly gracious guy. Just like he is on camera, he is off the camera. And to buy some of his DVDs and books, go to www.tommiranda.com. Or you can meet him at Huntstock in Massachusetts this year, August 9th through the 11th, where he'll be delivering some seminars, signing caps, and talking about his wild African safari hunts.
Yes!
To find out more info, go to www.huntstockevents.com. Now let's get into the podcast.
This has been a chess game with these deer, I'll tell you what. Farm lots behind us and different areas. Always moving on these deer, and they're really tough to get close to.
Welcome to another episode of the Hunt Suburbia podcast, and I'm sitting here on the peak of Killington Mountain with world-renowned bow hunter Tom Miranda.
Sure great to be here, Pat.
Tom, thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure to interview you, and this was kind of a dream scenario to do a podcast in, and I'm really happy that I get to share it with you.
It's awesome. Beautiful place.
Yep. So tell me, Tom, so I like to talk about your whole life story, and basically I think where we should start is at the beginning, and how did you get into trapping, first of all?
Well, my trapping story starts at age 11, 1969. I'll never forget it. My dad said, "Come outside, son, come outside, I want to show you something." And we look up at the moon, he goes, "There's men walking on the moon. Remember that you can do anything you put your mind to." I'll never forget that. Well, that fall and that winter, I used to watch my next door neighbor kid walk down the railroad tracks. He was 4 or 5 years older than me, but he had a basket on his back. And I started following him down there and watching him, and he was trapping. And sooner than later, I got to carry the basket and help him. 2 years later, he got a girlfriend, and I got the trap line. That was in Columbus, Ohio.
Oh, so grew up in Columbus, Ohio, trapping there. Did you acquire some of that guy's traps, or you acquired his trap line, or how did all that work?
I bought my own traps, and then eventually when he totally quit, I started to be able to buy some of his and accumulate traps. And of course, then he went off to college, and I inherited the whole trap line. And I got so into it that I would get my dad to take me in the car because I couldn't drive, and he'd take me to other places so I could expand my trap line, And of course, in those days, in the summer, you'd have to mow yards or do other work to make, money as a kid, so you could buy ice cream bars or do what you wanted, And I had lawns to mow, but the trapping was so much better, so much nicer, and you could make way more money. Back in those days, trapping was big business.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could catch enough muskrats in 1 or 2 days' checks. Would be a whole month worth of mowing the grass.
Yeah.
So that Big Walnut Creek was like the Yukon to me.
You mean your dad wasn't giving you $100 a week like a lot of kids these days, just to do nothing?
Had to work.
Yep.
Had to work.
Yep. So before you started trapping as a young kid, were you into hunting or trapping at all? Did you come from a family that did it, or how does that story go?
No, my father did a little bit of deer hunting with a rifle, but I eventually asked for a bow and used to shoot target bow when I was a kid. But once I got into trapping, there was no more hunting. It was all about trapping.
Yeah.
And I trapped, and all through school, and even after high school, I moved to Michigan, bought land with trapping money, built a log cabin with trapping money, and ran a trap line in Michigan in the Northern Peninsula. Yeah.
For people who don't know what trapping is, and I'm not very versed in it, can you talk about a little bit of the work that goes into it, and how you got to lay traps, the work that goes into laying it, but then also retrieving your game after you trap them?
To me, trapping is the ultimate outdoor experience because it's something that you have to do every day during trapping season because you have a responsibility to the trap line and to the animals. You have to go out and scout early season like you do deer hunting or anything else. You got to find the tracks and the trails. You've got to have the equipment, the traps, and a trapping license and the know-how. You've got to set your traps and you got to check them every day. And every day you check your traps, it's like Christmas morning because you don't know what you're going to catch. And you might set a trap for a muskrat and catch a mink. Yeah. And the minks are worth 5 times or 10 times what a muskrat's worth. Or you might try to catch a raccoon and catch a fox.
Yeah.
And so it's really nice in that regard. But when you get home, you got to skin the animals and stretch them so you can sell the pelts. Trapping's one of the few outdoor pursuit sports where you can actually make money from the wildlife. And I got into it originally because I enjoyed the outdoors, but the money side of it became more and more important to me the longer I did it because I could see a real upside to it. I could see a real, the better I got at it, the more I'd catch. The bigger my trap line, the bigger area, the more I'd catch. And the more I'd catch and the better I'd take care of my fur, the more money I would get in my fur checks. And I bought my first Jeep with trapping money. I bought my first airplane with trapping money. Yeah. So trapping was very good to me.
When you are setting traps, what is like the average trap line? Because you have to be able to check it all daily, so it can't be 30 miles long. What's an average trap line in length and how many traps you set out?
Well, when you start out at 11 years old, it's just as far as you can walk from 4 o'clock till 5:30, because I'm checking my traps at 4 o'clock in the morning. But as you go along and you get more onto a road trap line, it gets a little bit longer, maybe 10, 15 miles until you become a long line trapper where you might drive 125, 150 miles a day in a loop. And when I ended up in South Dakota running big, long trap lines, you could check your traps every other day there. So I'd run a line west of the Missouri River and a line east of the Missouri River. And it would take me all day to check my traps on each line. And so if you catch a fox in the East River right after you check, then that fox is going to be in the trap for 2 days before you get back. So it gives the traps more time to fill up when you can do a check like that, and you could out west. And I used to pay a guy to skin my animals because I could make more money setting traps and catching the animals than I could taking time at night to skin them.
Yeah. So when you figure out, the efficiencies of your business, and you're a great businessman, and we'll talk a little bit about that possibly on this one or a different podcast, but you're just figuring out how to be, in real estate they call it the highest, what is it called? The highest use of the property, right? What's the highest and most valuable use of the property? You're trying to find the highest, most valuable use of your time.
Well, you mentioned real estate. I mean, trapping or even bow hunting is a lot like real estate because it's location, 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 right?
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing, a bow hunter, when I'm in a tree stand bow hunting, I need that deer to walk within 30 yards or 40 yards of my set, for a good shot. But trapping, you got to get them to step in a place that's big.
Yep.
So you really got to narrow it down.
Yep. And for people watching, I'm pretty sure almost everybody's going to know who Tom Miranda is, but I want to just kind of tease the second half of the podcast, which will talk a lot about your bow hunting pursuits. We're going to get the story of your trapping pursuits. But can you run through, because I don't have the greatest memory, on all the slams that you've completed as a bow hunter and kind of what goes into that, and then we'll jump back to the trapping.
Yeah, well, what ends up happening is a lot of guys will go after, whitetails, and that, they'll shoot a buck that doesn't make Pope and Young, that 125 range. But then they'll finally want to get a Pope and Young buck, and they'll want to kind of get bigger deer every time. I decided to go more for the collection of animals. Of course, I was doing a TV show, and so I needed to have shows about different areas, different places, and different animals. And so I ended up going after the Super Slam of North American animals, and that's the 29 big game animals. So, that's all the deer. There's 5 deer species, and there's 4 bear species, and 4 sheep species, and the 5 caribou, and, that 3 elk and 3 moose, and, you got the muskox and mountain lion, mountain goat, So there's the 29 species. So I was able to finish that, and that took me 13 years to finish the Super Slam.
And that's all with a bow, too. You can do the slam with a gun, but you did it all with a
Or you can use a bow and a crossbow, or a bow and a gun, or a muzzle loader. I did all of the Super Slam with a bow and arrow, and I filmed all the hunts.
Yeah.
So that was the tough part, was filming the hunts. And when you're doing the Super Slam, it's a collection of slams, so I got the Grand Slam of sheep when I did that. And then, of course, I went on to try to do the African Slam, which is the animals of Africa. And then I went on to the animals of North America, of the world animals. So and the Safari Club International has different achievements that you can get, milestones that you can get for hunting, and I've added up a little over 170 species total.
That's incredible.
Plus a lot of whitetails too.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah. And when you come down to Huntstock, it's a big whitetail show, so I'm sure a lot of people are going to want to talk to you about whitetails down there, and hopefully they're going to want to talk about your trapping pursuits as well. And I think the way that you mention it, that it's really hard work, it teaches you, well, actually, let's go back to trapping and tell me some of the things that it taught you about life, and how did it make you into a better person by trapping?
It's all about work ethic at the end of the day, and trapping, the harder your work, the better you're going to be, the better you're going to get at it, the more inquisitive you are. Trapping's all about the small things. It's that one twig laying near your trap can force the animal's foot onto the pan. One twig in the wrong place can get caught between the jaws and keep the animal from getting caught.
So you're setting up twigs as kind of like to make sure that
Fencing.
their foot goes the other way.
Yeah, you're trying to fence the animal to cross the trap. And usually you only have one chance, one good chance of them walking through, to get to your set. So, it's the work ethic that's involved in, and never quitting, because you've got to be out there every day. If it snows, you still got to check your traps. If it's raining, sleeting, you got to check your traps. When you're going to school, you got to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and run your traps. Got to run your traps every day. And so it becomes a lot of responsibility. You learn responsibility not only to the trap line, but to the animals, to yourself. I was very blessed to have parents who, they gave me a lot of latitude. I mean, can you imagine being 11 years old in today's society and your parents letting you go out and walk down the railroad tracks at 4 o'clock in the morning? No, it's not going to happen. But my parents allowed me. And then when it came to schoolwork, You know, if I had to skin animals, that was even more important than homework.
Yep. And they understood that, and they allowed you that latitude.
And it was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge.
So I learned a lot of, my lessons and about teamwork and hard work and everything from sports. I know you'd played some sports too. But is it kind of a similar thing where when you're out trapping and learning those lessons as having a good coach in sports and teaching you responsibility and hard work?
Well, you learn it yourself, you know, because you're out there by yourself. Trapping's a loner sport like bow hunting is.
Yep.
You know, you don't have an audience. Of course, when you do a TV show for 35 years, you got a cameraman behind you. You know, you're pretty much got a buddy in the tree with you all the time,
Yeah.
or in the blind, or following you around. But the reality is you're learning, you're making mistakes, and you're learning from your mistakes, and you're moving forwards. It's great to have a coach in athletics that can point out what you're doing wrong and help to motivate you. But when you're a trapper or a bow hunter, you got to be self-motivated. You're not going to come home and your wife or your mom's not going to say, "Hey, you'll get him next time. Good job, buddy." Yeah. You got to suck it up when you make a bad shot or miss. You got to, and you got to celebrate for yourself when you're successful. So, but it's all about not quitting and understanding that if you work at it hard enough, you can be the best. And would ever say that I've never even met the best. There's so many people out there that are good at what they do. So many people better at trapping than I ever was, better at bow hunting than I ever was, better shot with a bow than I ever was. But I always told myself that it didn't really matter. I did the best I could, and I'll outwork anybody. And that comes right down to that work ethic of not quitting, And even the television industry and the business that I got into, I didn't know anything about it. I had to learn it all on my own. And it's school of hard knocks,
Yep.
I mean, you make mistakes. Sometimes you make huge mistakes.
Yep.
Those mistakes can cost you money. Those mistakes can cost you time. They can cost you a gig or a job. There's so much involved, but you learn from it. And I was very blessed too to have a little risk factor in me. I was willing to take a risk. And so any door that opened up, I was ready to go through it, And I made it real big in the trapping industry because I had my own line of lures. I made some of the very first how to trap videos. I was very well known. I could go anywhere and do seminars on trapping like some of the big bow hunters today can do at your show and others. But when I got on TV, I wasn't trapping, I was bow hunting. Yep. So it was like a start over, it was a do-over. So I went from being very popular trapper to who's this Tom Miranda bow hunter guy?
But that's fun when you're an entrepreneur. When you get a start over, it's like, well, all right, well, I built this up. Now let's see if I can do it over here. I really enjoy trying to piece that together too. And you say it's all about hard work, and hard work doesn't feel like hard work when you love doing it and it's motivating. And what better motivator than to wake up to Christmas morning every single morning? I mean, that excitement is incredible.
Absolutely. And it just, you learn every day. Every day that I've ever been in the woods, I've learned something, And when you're out there every day, trappers by far are the keenest woodsmen, keenest outdoorsmen there are, because they're out there every day. They're out there every day. They're looking for the little mink tracks in the silky mud. They're looking for, deer trails. They're looking for everything that they need to find because they're trying to snare a fox or a coyote, or they're trying to outwit animals. And their time is valuable because the season's only so long. All deer hunters know that.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you got to get it done in this window. And it's expensive to be out there if you're driving your truck of gas. And same thing with setting tree stands or running trail cameras or anything. You're spending money. It's a lot cheaper to go buy an Angus beef and put them in the freezer than to eat venison. You know what I mean? At the end of the day.
That's right. Yeah, Joe Donito, who I interviewed, mentioned on the podcast. He goes, "Let's not start talking about how much deer cost by the pound because right. once you do all the addition, it's going to be more expensive than all that." So let's talk about how the obsession built. You started in grade school, or was it middle school? And then through high school, you were trapping all the time. How did the obsession build, and where did it go from that once you graduated high school?
I was voted most athletic in our high school, and I went to a very large high school because I played ice hockey, I played baseball, I played on the football team, I ran track. So I did almost all the sports except basketball. And, when you're athletic like that, you're an A personality, you're a go-getter, you're always motivated to move forward. And I thought there was a time that I might be a Major League Baseball player. I mean, early on in my life, that's what I really wanted to be, And I was a decent pitcher, but I just didn't have a fast enough fastball to make it to the major leagues. And I got a couple of scholarships here or there, but at the end of the day, when I got cut, I tried to walk on for a big university, and I got cut. And I realized that somebody else was making that decision. I didn't feel like I got a full chance, even though I probably did. But at that point, when I got cut from baseball, I realized that I was letting somebody else make a decision about my future, and I wasn't going to let somebody do that to me again. But the other thing that I did, which was a huge mistake, and I learned basically at the same time, is I quit baseball. I thought, I'm not going to let somebody tell me that I'm not good enough, so I'm going to go trap because I know I'm a good trapper. But I should have never quit, because that's the problem. And even today, I tell everybody, no matter what, if it's your passion, which baseball is my passion, trapping's my passion, bow hunting's my passion, don't quit. No matter what, don't quit. And that was a huge, huge learning curve for me. And when I got into the trapping, I could determine how good I was going to be by how hard I was going to work at it. And I just didn't quit. And I just kept building my resume, And that's what I always taught I have three children. They're all grown up now. But I taught them all, build your resume, You want to have a resume better than everybody else that's in your field, That's why I got my pilot's license. That's why I flew my trap line. Because and that's why I became a government trapper. Not only was I a professional trapper, but I was a government trapper. I was a pilot who flew his trap line. I made the first trapping videos. I mean, my resume was very long. And I did the same thing in bow hunting, the very same thing.
So do you have you talk about wishing you didn't quit baseball. Sounds a little bit like it could be a regret. Do you have any regrets looking back on how your life went?
It would have been totally different if I would have stayed on that path, but I don't have any regrets. It's not worth it worrying about the past. You got to move forward no matter what. And I was just very blessed because of that little bit of risk factor in me. I wasn't afraid to go through the door. If the door opened and I thought I could adjust my way up the ladder, that's what I did. And that's the entrepreneurial spirit that gets you to where you need to be. You know? And I made mistakes. I went through some doors I wish I wouldn't have went through. But you correct and you move on.
Were those doors in Vegas or where were they?
Maybe a few there.
So as you're talking about what I find attractive about the idea of getting into trapping is it's one of those things that, like you said, when you work hard enough, it's going to produce. If you work hard enough, you're going to produce there. And that's not with everything in life. You can't work and get there. If you were never going to be an NBA basketball player no matter what because of what you were born with. You weren't given the height and everything that you need to become an NBA player, even if you worked hard enough. But things like trapping, you can work yourself into being as successful as you want to be.
Yeah, and the other thing too is being realistic and being sincere to yourself. I give a lot of seminars on bow hunting mostly nowadays. And I have a little trick. I have a little compact that I carry with me on stage, and basically it's a camouflage that you put on your face.
Yep.
And I tell everybody that it's magic. If you want to be a successful buck hunter, you got to wear this special compact magic. And I'll open it up and I'll pretend that I'm going to start putting it on, and I say, it's not the makeup that's magic. It's the mirror. Because if anything's going wrong in your life, if anything's not right, the first thing you have to do is look in the mirror because it's probably your fault.
Yep.
And in today's society, everybody wants to blame everybody else. Well, this person did this and that person did that. I even did it. I blamed the coaches in college, not thinking I was good enough. I was blaming somebody else rather than look in the mirror and say, maybe you're not good enough. Maybe you need to readjust. Maybe you need to work harder if you're going to stay in it, or maybe you need to get into something else. And so that's, to me, is a huge thing. Understand that everything starts with you. And it's not all about you. It's about your core values and how you project yourself to be successful. That's the key. And you can be successful in anything. I think if I would be a plumber, I would be the best plumber I could be. Or if I was going to be a contractor, or if I was going to be anything. And I think I learned at a young age to try to have a passion, I'd always make my bed every day, and I'd make it as really good. I mean, I wasn't a military guy bouncing the quarters off of it, but my bed was always way nicer than my sister's room, you know. And I took out the trash every day. The trash was clean. But it became a passion for me to show my parents that I was a good worker for them, because they allowed me to trap in the middle of the night, you know, and do what I needed to do. And so it's about giving, you know. And I break down society, you know, in the binary code of ones and zeros, because you're either a giver or you're a taker. And that's how I look at it. The more you can give back, it comes from this core responsibility to yourself and understanding that if things aren't right with you, blame yourself first and figure it out, because it's, you know, it's probably somewhat your fault.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, let's go back to, so after you graduated high school, you went to college, or you were hoping to get on the baseball team. When the baseball dream died for you, what happened with trapping at that point?
Well, I quit college. I dropped it like a bad habit and started trapping. That's when I decided I was going to buy property, got a job.
Go back to doing what you already know you can be successful at.
Absolutely, you know. I got a job, tried to make a bunch of money so that I could go north and trap. And I had bought property with trapping money. I got my Jeep. I went to north. I built a log cabin, ran a trap line in Michigan on the Upper Peninsula. I learned a lot about myself. You live by yourself for 3 years in the woods with no electric, no phone. You learn a lot. I think I worried my parents sick.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you heat with wood, cook with wood. You become, you know, a real outdoors person, and you start to be. And I learned a lot about trapping, a lot about being broke. I knew I didn't want to be broke anymore.
Being lonely, maybe?
Yeah, being lonely. Yeah. That's right.
Now,
absolutely.
Did you live in it year round?
No. Well, the first year I lived there a whole year, and then I started going. What happened was I figured out, just like the deer hunting is up here, you figure out that it's tough. Trapping in the wilderness is tough. So I had this farmland trap line in Ohio where I knew all the landowners. I had all the permissions. So I started trapping in Michigan to a certain stage, and then I'd blow down home and stay at my parents' house, and I'd run traps down there, and I'd make it 3 times the money, and then I'd go back up to Michigan in the winter and trap through the ice for beavers, otters, stuff like that, until the fur market broke, and then I got the government trapper job, and I moved to South Dakota.
Before we go to that, we'll go to that next, but how did you learn how to build your own cabin? What went into that? How did you build it? And what kind of a cabin?
Well, solid logs. I girdled logs in the winter.
But did you read about it, or did you grow up building it all?
Read books. Yeah, I mean, back then there was no internet. You know, there were no cell phones.
Yeah.
So you learned about it in books, reading books. Bradford Angier, you know, the survival books and all that stuff. That's how I did it. Yeah. I girdled the trees in the winter, and then in the spring, when the sap ran all out of them, they kind of dried on the stump. Cut them down, drug them to camp, and built it. Yeah.
Cool. So that was an awesome chapter, going to Michigan. Then you went to South Dakota next. And how old were you when you went there?
You know, I was 24, 25. Yeah, 24, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. 24 years old.
And what was your mission going out there?
Well, I took a government trapper job. So what happened was, to backtrack just a little bit, I heard about this professional trappers college that Purdue University put on, actually through the Fur Takers of America. It was in LaGrange, Indiana. In 1983, I took that class and I aced it, and they asked me to come back as an instructor. I was an instructor at that college for 10 years. Well, one of the guys that taught there was named Odon Kaur, and he was a government trapper. And him and I became friends. When the fur market went down, I talked to him, and he said there's a job open in South Dakota. You should go apply for it. And then he put in a good word for me. Another guy that taught at the Trappers College was named Pete Askins. He worked for Woodstream Corporation, who was in Lidditz, Pennsylvania, which they made the Woodstream traps back in the day, the Oneida Victor traps. And he was a good friend of mine, too, and he put in a good word for me. And I ended up getting the job. The cool thing was I had my own trapping lure line, and it would have been a conflict of interest to be a government trapper and start your own trapping lure line, but I already had it, so when they gave me the job, they let me keep my side business. I actually became the question box editor that next year in the Fur Fish Game magazine. So Fur Fish Game is a trapping, hunting, fishing magazine that was started in 1925. Originally, it started in 1900 as Hunter, Trader, Trapper. And I was a question box editor for that magazine at the same time, and then that gave me a little more notoriety. And I wrote some books on trapping, and then at Trappers College, I met a guy who said, you should make a video out of your book. He goes, that's an awesome book on trapping fox. You should make a video out of it. Hell, I didn't even know what a video was. Yeah. I had no clue. Yeah. So I ended up making a trapping video on fox and coyote, and one thing led to another, and yeah, the rest is history.
For the people who don't know, what is a government tracker?
A government trapper is somebody who works for the government and takes care of animal damage control complaints. So a rancher would call and say that a coyote was killing sheep in his pasture, or some of his calves were being chased by coyotes, after they were born in the cattle pasture, or beaver had dammed culverts, and so these ranchers. I had a 10-county area in central South Dakota that was my territory, and anybody who had animal damage problems, I went there and trapped the animals. And we could use M44 sodium cyanide getters on coyotes, which basically is a poison. We could shoot them out of an airplane, coyotes out of an airplane, which mostly we did in the wintertime. We could den coyotes. We could steel trap them or snare them. So there's a lot of different techniques about trapping that I learned in South Dakota being a government trapper. That came into play really well. You couldn't, of course, use the cyanide when you're just a fur trapper, but I learned a lot about coyote habits and like the clannish nature of coyotes when I was a government trapper. So when I quit that job and started long lining out there, I had a huge territory, and that's when I used my airplane. In fact, my airplane was the reason I quit, because I got my airplane and I was running my government trap line with the airplane, and my supervisor found out about it, and he called me. He goes, "What the hell are you doing with this airplane?" And I said, "Well, everybody's got a quad, everybody's got a snowmobile. Why can't I use an airplane?" He goes, "That's not going to work." And I said, "Well, I don't know. I think I'm going to go out on my own, sir." That's what I did.
So as a government trapper, they would pay you a salary and then they take all the furs, or how does that work?
Yeah, well, a lot of the furs are taken in the summer, the spring and the summer. A lot, the coyotes mate, and you want to try to do as much of the damage control and everything, in the spring before, they mate and all that. So you do a lot of aerial hunting in the winter when there's snow on the ground. But when in the fall, when the furs were good, we had a pool that we could put the furs in, and then that would allow us to get quads and things like that. And then we were allowed to take vacation and trap. In some of the areas that I knew that were really, coyote infested, I never saved coyotes from those areas, but I trapped those areas hard, and they helped me on my job, and then we got to keep the furs for that. So that was nice. So yeah.
So from there, where did you go trapping after leaving the South Dakota job?
Well, I trapped all around in central South Dakota. I trapped almost all the farms that I had been a government trapper on. I did it privately. And I worked with the new government trapper.
And is that when you started filming? Was when you were going back to doing it privately?
Well, no, I made most of the films. I made films while I was a government trapper because I could, But most of the films that I made, because I made quite a few, were done after I left the government. Yeah, yep. Exactly.
Yep. So then how do you get from there? Was that basically the last place that you trapped, South Dakota? Did you make any other moves anywhere else and go trapping?
No, because I got on TV. I got on ESPN when I was in South Dakota.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So how did that all come about? How did you go? And did fur prices fluctuating at all play into your decision to leave trapping behind a little bit and then get into bow hunting?
No, the fur prices weren't bad, but I had been there and done that, and I was ready to move on, Another door open.
Yep.
The video business for trapping was really good. I met this video distribution company. Actually, he was a one-man band. His name was Sheen Ray, and he lived in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And I met him, and at the time I was one of the only guys that had trapping videos, and I had made the first ones, or some of the very first ones. And I got him to start distributing my videos. And it was great because there were so many mom and pa, these video stores out there.
Oh, yeah.
Places everywhere. And you could go rent a video for $1 for the weekend, right?
Yeah.
Remember those days?
Yeah.
Well, I got all my videos in all these places, and I was teaching a lot of people through these videos how to trap. And I had this lure business, and I had written books, and so all these people started ordering products from me. And it turned into a really big business. Now I gave trapping lessons and all different things about and around trapping. And eventually I got to the point where I wanted to do a television show about trapping. And I had made a pilot, but I couldn't get it accepted anywhere. And there was this network called ESPN. They had this outdoors,
Never heard of it.
Yeah, Jimmy Houston was a fisherman in Oklahoma, and I went to see him. And he had a show on ESPN, Jimmy Houston Outdoors it was called. I actually got to be on his show eventually. But long story short, I waited in line to get his autograph, and when I got up there, I told him that I wanted to do a TV show and I wanted to be on ESPN. I didn't know nothing about it, really. TV business. I had made a lot of videos. And I had been making deer hunting videos, too, because my trapping videos had done so well, and, make deer videos. And, that's when I really started bow hunting, when I was making those videos, turkey hunting videos. Anyways, Jimmy said, trapping, I don't think will fly. Do you do anything else? And I go, well, I like to bow hunt. He goes, there you go. And so, because I was a pilot, I decided to make a new...
This episode is brought to you by the Outdoor Gazette. The Outdoor Gazette is the social media app for outdoor enthusiasts. No algorithmic tracking, no data sharing, and no censorship of real-life outdoor activities. Enjoy a fully customizable user experience, and we're excited to announce the launch of the second generation of the Outdoor Gazette will be available soon on the App Store and Google Play, and definitely before Huntstock, New York. Come see us there. The new version retains all your favorite features, the Hunt and Fish Slam pages, the trail camera contest for each state and province, and the social feeds. All of these have been optimized for better performance and speed. We also significantly reworked Gazette TV, which is the Outdoor Gazette's very own YouTube alternative within the app, now fully activated. Plus, the desktop version of the Gazette is here, making it easier than ever to use the app right in your browser. Slam pages and Gazette TV. Sign up at www.outdoorgazette.com to get notified when the new version is available on the app stores. We'll inform you as soon as you can download it, and thank you to everyone who tried our app and provided feedback. We hope you enjoyed the new Outdoor Gazette.
Hey, Tom Miranda here in Vermont at Pat's Deer Camp. Wow, what a fantastic place, huh? Don't forget to come and see me at the world's biggest deer camp, Huntstock, Massachusetts. I'll have a few books, a few DVDs, do a few seminars. We'll have a blast. Come and see me at Huntstock.
Anyways, Jimmy said, trapping, I don't think will fly. Do you do anything else? And I go, well, I like to bow hunt. He goes, there you go. And so, because I was a pilot, I decided to make a new show tape, and I made it on hunting, fishing, and adventure. It was called the Outdoor Adventure Magazine. And I aired 2 years on Sports Channel America, 1990 and 1991. And in 1992, I got picked up by ESPN. So, yeah, it was like little
true.
Leagues to the big leagues.
Yeah, you finally did make the big leagues.
I did.
That was your dream.
I did.
Just in a different thing.
Yeah, and when I was doing that show, I got to meet all the big leaguers, and I got to go to all the big cool events because ESPN was ESPN, Yeah. And they really liked me at the network because I was just this down-to-earth, authentic guy. I was like the authentic hunter-trapper guy. I wasn't an ex-athlete that was hosting a show and going on a hunt here or there. And I did a lot of adventurous stuff, and that was my hook. Walking on fire, climbing Devil's Tower, flying in different types of aircraft, just all types of adventures. And we also fished on the show, and we also bow hunted. And it was a great mix, and I had great ratings. And that's what it takes when you get up on a level like that. And, of course, we didn't have internet, we didn't have YouTube, we didn't have any of that stuff back then.
Well, and now that we have YouTube, I was talking with you before we came up here. I don't think any of those ESPN shows are on YouTube or anywhere that you can find right now, right?
No, there's not. My shows, there's not. Not the old ones. I need to bring them out.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people watching this are going to comment.
Dust them off a little bit.
Please put them out in a DVD or put them up on YouTube.
Yeah.
So what was it about trapping, do you think, that wouldn't have flied on TV?
It's somewhat controversial because the animal's held by the leg, held by the, it's trapped in one spot. And it can be indiscriminatory to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. And so it's all comes down to education at the end of the day. And that was the whole key to it. I wanted to educate the public on what trapping really was. The fact that these animals only have certain lifespan, and they can overpopulate areas. They can get diseases like rabies and other things. They can do damage to livestock. There's a lot of reasons to, the skunks that get into the pheasant eggs and the quail eggs and all the different animals and nuisance animals and things that have valuable pelts that can be, trapping is really a viable tool for wildlife management. But, it was one of those things where, most of the there's no big money in it. There's not a lot of like big bow companies or big rifle companies or ammunition companies that support a television show.
Yep, that's true.
Especially at that level, you know. Excuse me.
What did you do with your scent business and stuff once you left the trapping world?
I kept it, and I turned it over to a buddy of mine named Tim Caven, who owns Minnesota Trapline. It's a big supply company. And I gave him all my formulas, and he had his own lure line, and he made, and you can still buy my trapping lures today.
I wondered, yeah.
Yeah, still out there. All my books are still out there, written back in the 80s. You know?
Cool. Yeah, you gave us a couple of books. If anybody we'll show the books post-production. Everybody wants to buy your book, they're still available on TomMiranda.com, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can bring them to Huntstock, and you'll probably sign them.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll have them at Huntstock.
So, all right, let's go from now into the bow hunting world. Basically, we talked about the show that you had, and it was the adventure show. You would do fishing, hunting, and adventures. Where did that start taking you, and what were some of those early experiences that you remember where you're like, all right, this was the right move?
Well, the first bow hunting video I ever made was called Big Timber Bears, a Saskatchewan bow hunting adventure. And I took my best buddy from high school, Paul T. Vaz, and me, we went to Canada and had a guided bear hunt over bait, and we filmed the hunts. And I put the video together. That was the very first video. It came out in 1989, hunting video with a bow. And at the time, I had called a company called McPherson Archery in Sparta, Wisconsin, which is now Matthews, of course.
Yeah, I've heard of the McPherson name.
Yeah, McPherson Archery it was called, and that's the bow I used on the very first hunt. So it's funny how all the bow brands I went through all those years on ESPN to end back up with Matthews, you know, to go full circle, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
But so, you know, of course, you know, there was a few deer I shot not on video, but when I started filming, everything I've shot's been on video. If it did, and that was my bar, you know, where a lot of guys, their bar is their target buck on trail cameras nowadays. Well, back then, we had the lines that you would have the little bear line. You'd string the fishing line out. You have the little clock, and when the animal walked down the trail and pulled the string, it stopped the clock. You know, those were the trail timers we had back in those days. But at the end of the day, it was all about the footage. You know, it was the best footage I could get, the best pre-roll. So I've never shot any giant bucks, or, you know, I've had big deer come under me, but it's too dark to film. I don't shoot them. You know. A lot of guys will shoot them and then do the hero later and say it was too early to. But to me, it's all about the footage. It was all about, and that was the discipline that it took to get the Super Slam on video. You know, when I finished that slam, I had guys calling me saying, "Oh, they were going to go after it. That was the coolest idea. That was the best video set they'd ever watched, to see the grizzly hunt and the brown bear hunt and all this." But at the end of the day, no one's been able to. No one's matched it yet. No one's been able to do it because it's very difficult. You're chained to that camera. You know, you can't shoot till the cameraman says I'm on him.
Yeah.
And you need pre-roll.
Yeah. Well, it's hard enough to get an animal, sneak up on them and get into range when you're by yourself, and then if you're adding, you know, a cameraman 100%. And a guide in there, and it's really hard to get everything on film. So
well, and ESPN cameras are this big, you know, so it's like a third person. The camera on the guy's shoulder is a third person, you know. And in the early days, you have to remember on ESPN, we weren't allowed to show the impact shots. So I was instrumental on us getting to see the impact shots, but it was difficult. And then they decided that if the arrow stuck in the deer or the animal, we couldn't show the hit. So I started using 85-pound draw bows, heavy arrows, aiming a little back to make sure I got pass-through so I could vindicate the hunts, because that's what you needed to do, you know. There was no vindication. We had to cut away. So, I mean, the deer comes in, you draw back, then you're on the deer, and then you cut back to the hunter, and he lets the arrow go, and then you just see deer butt running through the woods. That's all we were allowed to show in those early days.
It's funny how the evolution kind of happens, because back, you know, that was the beginning. You weren't allowed to show it, and then it was kill shot, kill shot, kill shot. And then there was a couple years back, I don't know if you know, because you know, you don't post a lot of videos on YouTube, but YouTube was starting to demonetize channels that showed kill shots and blood. So it kind of went back there, but they've lightened up on that, you know, since. But on that note, how have you seen the industry change, the hunting industry, content creation, and in general change? And what do you think the pros and cons cons are.
Well, it's totally changed, from the very beginning. The cameras were $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 when I was on ESPN for a camera. Can you imagine buying a camera to shoot your own show and it cost $80,000? The editing, it just was such a high bar to get into it. Not a lot of guys could afford to do it. Now with a small camera, or even an iPhone, you can record. You can record a whole show and cut it together on a computer. So
I can record the B-roll of you talking right now, and we'll edit it right in.
There you go. But anyway, so it's totally different now than it used to be. And a lot of the things that we used to do that was difficult, like A/B roll editing and things, now it's done on a computer and it's just cut. And we used to have to start at the very beginning of the show and edit all the way to the end. That's how it was done. Yeah. Now you can, when I edit my shows now, I start at the end. I edit them backwards. But it makes a better show for me, and it's a little bit easier for me to get the feel for how I want the show to end, So, but the internet really changed everything, because all of a sudden content was flooding onto the internet, and then it was free content, And I was always taught through the ESPN model that you had to get paid for your footage, It's an expensive business, expensive cameras, expensive trips, expensive hunts. So you had to get paid, and so our sponsors were paying sizable money to be involved. And of course, being on ESPN, we were not allowed to endorse products on air. So we couldn't say Matthews is the best bow sin sliced bread. We couldn't say Realtree Camo is the best camo ever. So we had to use subliminal advertising by wearing it, by showing tighter shots that revealed the pattern, by talking, by showing its effectiveness because the game got close enough.
Right.
Do those types of things. Whereas now it's infomercial everywhere. All the TV shows, they can, whatever they have to say to sell their product, they do. So
yeah, but I feel like a lot of that, it just turns off the viewer when it's so, people want to believe, and you're very authentic, and that's why people really like you, and you built your following. You've talked about it on other podcasts. It's authenticity, being real, and that you can just tell right off the bat when you're watching a hunting show and the person's they don't really believe in the product and they're just doing it as an infomercial.
Oh, yeah.
You can tell that immediately, can't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, in the early days, we would use cut-ins because on ESPN required 2 cameras, shoots. That was part of your contract. You had to use, you can imagine getting in a tree stand with 2 big TV cameras. You're never going to get a deer, it's just impossible, So we would take 1 camera and we would shoot with a 2-camera field, which meant we did cut-in shots or reversals, which a lot of guys frown on, and back in the video days, when the Will Primos started his Truth series of hunting, which Will Primos is a good dear friend of mine, he would always talk about, this ain't Hollywood. You know who Hollywood was? Me. Because I was on ESPN, I was the only hunter that was, airing shows on ESPN, and I had to put the cut-ins in. So I had to cut back to me glassing and cut back to me at full draw, and those were all cut-in shots that we couldn't really do without to make that 2-camera feel, to make it feel like a promotion, like a professional production.
Yeah.
So, those days were, I took a lot of heat from those guys, and even Drury's, they used to give me a lot of grief about stuff like that, but at the end of the day, you didn't want it to be fakey, and when it was done right, it didn't really feel that fakey, but a lot of guys would, kind of read into it, when you watch it, it's kind of like, he can't have a camera out there.
Yeah.
Of course, now there's GoPros, and there's all
it
ways
makes it
to
a lot easier. Yeah.
A lot easier.
So, all right, let's jump into, some of the adventure stuff, you've been all over the world. What's the biggest adventure that you've been on that, maybe it's not the best kill or it's not, whatever, but being in a different culture where something that you saw was like, wow, this is really cool that I'm getting to experience.
The funnest hunt I ever did was in Australia for water buffalo. Of course, this was, everybody remembers the Crocodile Dundee movie, where he says, that's not a knife, this is a knife, You fly all the way to Australia and you go into the Northern Territory, and then we get in a twin-engine plane and we fly to the Aboriginal lands and we land on a dirt strip on the Coolitong River. And here we are in this place where there's saltwater crocodiles and there's barramundi fish and there's wallabies and kangaroos and dingo dogs and Aboriginals, and we're hunting buffalo, so you got to have heavy poundage, and it's like hunting these water buffalo, which can be heavier than Cape buffalo. And I'll never forget it because we were doing an ESPN show. The outfitter had bought brand new quads. And so we had the cameraman had a quad, I had a quad, and the guide had a quad. And we would ride 15 kilometers through the paperbark forest to get to the floodplain where all the buffalo were. And every day we'd see kookaburras, and it was just a wilderness experience, you know. It was just as wild as it could be. I got a funny story, too, on that. So, like, there's barramundi like crazy in this river. And I tried fishing every time we'd get back, and I wouldn't catch anything. And so there was a guy called Ray McKay. He was a old guy from New Zealand, and he was the camp helper. Guy was like 99 years old. And so I told Ray McKay, I said, I want to have fish and chips, because they had a big old bag of potatoes there. And I said, I want fish and chips for dinner when we come back from buffalo hunting. I said, I'm just dying for that barramundi. And every time we'd come back, he wouldn't catch one. This was like a 12-day hunt. So finally, I come back and I go, $100 for a barramundi. If you catch a barramundi, I'll give you 100 US. If you catch a barramundi. So we go out hunting the next day. We come back, he got 3 of them. It cost me $300 for fish and chips in the middle of nowhere.
He just needed a little motivation.
Oh my goodness, that's what it was. But yeah, I shot a big buffalo on that trip, and I've been back many times since. Just a fun hunt, just a wilderness wild. You know, that wasn't suburbia.
A lot of people don't realize how wild and how big the wilderness is in Australia.
It's
craziness. It's most of the country nobody lives in.
Yeah. Of course, I've been to Africa 60 times, you know. Yeah. So at the end of the day, that's a place I love to go. Of course, I have a bow camp over there. I take guys over there bow hunting. It's really nice. It's a fun hunt. And it's like Christmas every morning because you don't know what's going to come into the water hole.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen leopards come into the water hole. You know, I've seen all different kinds of animals. One time I was sitting on stand and the ground was moving, and I was like, what the heck is that? I asked my cameraman, I go, what is that? What is that? He goes, I don't know. It was like this whole flock of mongoose, like 250 mongoose just descend on the water hole. They're like little weasels like this long. It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
You see crazy stuff over there.
Yeah, I told you the closest thing I've been to that is North Dakota with my first time going out west and sitting overlooking a river bottom, and you're watching all this different, 5 or 6 different big game species go into the water at a distance, and that felt amazing. I can only imagine what it's like in Africa.
Yeah, and in our blinds, you're only 20 yards away. So you got them right there.
Yeah, are you on the ground or are you up high?
Both, in tree stands, on the ground.
Yep.
Yeah, both.
Let's talk. So, what was your first trip to Africa, and what did you remember about it the most? What made you want to keep going back?
Well, what I remember about it the most was I was doing ESPN shows, and I didn't have enough footage. Yeah. And it's spring, and my shows start airing in July through December.
So the season over there is our spring here.
It's opposite seasons because it's south of the equator. So
that's what's attractive.
July is the middle of winter, So I needed shows, and in the spring here you can hunt turkeys or bears. Basically, that's pretty much it. Odd ad if you go to South Texas. But anyways, I went over to Africa to make shows, and I didn't even really want to go, but I thought, you know what, I'll go over there and I'll experience it and I'll do it. And I loved it. And I had a great experience. My first time over, I shot a warthog, a kudu, an impala, and a red hartebeest. So I shot 4 species over there. I made 3 shows out of them, and it was a hit. And so I started going every year, a couple times a year. Now I go 3 times a year.
And were those species part of the slam?
They were part of the animals that I needed to require for were required for SCIs, Animals of Africa, absolutely. Yeah.
So what's like the most memorable experience outside of hunting over there that you had? Dealing with the people, learning about culture, or anything like that?
No, almost getting killed. That would be the main thing that almost happened to me. No, I was trying to finish my Africa Big 5. Well, actually, I had hippopotamus, so it was actually going to be this Big 6. But the Big 5 is the elephant, the lion, the leopard, the Cape buffalo, and the rhinoceros, okay? Those are the Big 5. Well, I had all but the lion. And so I'm hunting in Mozambique for lion. I had been once before and not gotten on a lion, so I went back for a full month. And when I got to camp, I started not feeling well, and I had a pain in my back, and I ended up with a kidney stone. And I could not pass this kidney stone after 2 or 3 days, and I was in a lot of pain and agony. And so we decided that we were going to go to the hospital, but it was a 3-day drive from the Nyassa Reserve in northern Mozambique near the Tanzania border all the way to where I needed to get an operation. So we started driving, and on the way, we got stopped by the military at this little town, and they said that they were going to put a convoy together because there were people shooting at the vehicles. These natives were restless or whatever, and they were shooting at vehicles. Anyway, we got in this convoy.
So they're going to usher you through.
Yeah, there was a convoy with the military.
Yeah.
And we had 3 soldiers on the back of the cruiser, and we started on this convoy, and then we drove into this gauntlet, and we got shot at. And I took a bullet through the door, over my foot into the transmission, a bullet right behind me in the seat, and they killed they're shooting at us driving by, you know. And a guy was killed on the back of our truck. They got him.
Oh, no.
They missed me right in front of me, behind me, and they got him.
Oh, no.
So, yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Anytime you travel, one of the things that you have to worry about is getting sick. Most of the time you got to push through it. Get up in the mornings, get out there, and a lot of times you can push through it with some vitamins and drinking a lot of water. That always helps. But then there's those times when you just can't push through it.
During the night, I started feeling bad, and now I've got a kidney stone, and we're in the middle of nowhere. It's not good. I just talked to Zach, and he said that if I'm not better, that we should go to the hospital, and that's what we're going to do. It's 2,200 kilometers. There's no big airports around here for global rescue. I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere, so we're just going to pack up and drive. It's going to be a 2-day drive. Hopefully I can take the rugged roads, and we're going to go to a little town in South Africa called Nelspruit. That's not to say that there's not hospitals in Mozambique, but if I have to get operated on, I would rather be in South Africa. I'm not real big on my personal life on TV so much, but my hunt just started, the hunt of a lifetime for lion and elephant, and now I'm sick, and it's just part of the story. I'll be back in Africa, I hope.
14 people are dead, including 3 children. 4 others suffered serious injuries.
I think one of the neat things about traveling to Africa and hunting is that you're away from communication. You're not always looking at your cell phone. You just enjoy your hunt. You get into the challenge. But sometimes things can happen that you maybe need to know about. There can be civil unrest in some of these countries, and there can be militants shooting drivers and passers-by on the highway, especially truck drivers, stealing all the goods out of their trucks and then burning the truck. So the Army had come in and set up these convoys. 4 soldiers climbed on the back of our Land Cruiser, and as we started to drive off in the convoy, I did about 50 kilometers with no problem at all.
We just came through a firefight like you can't believe. We're in a convoy coming through this little unrest here in Mozambique. Sure enough, we got ambushed.
Hurry, hurry, this man is like leading there.
Bullet holes on the door.
We had several bullet holes in the truck, especially in the back part of it, and 2 in my door. We had a wounded guy on the back of the truck, and so it just really became just real at that point.
I saw him coming through, right? Look, right there it is. Yeah. Right here. That's my side.
I forgot about being sick there for about an hour. It's something that you really don't feel like is ever going to happen to you. And when it does happen, it's almost like a dream, a make-believe. But now, even as I think about it today, I was very, very lucky.
And so I ended up, after all that ordeal, we had to try to drive that guy to get him to some help, you know, and he died on the way. And then we we got all the way to where I needed to go. Then I had to get an operation, and then after I healed up for a few days, I chartered a plane back and lion hunted and shot my lion.
Wow. I thought when you first were going to tell that, starting that story, that you almost got killed by the lion or a game animal.
Yeah.
So how did you guys get out of that situation after you've been shot at? Did the convoy and the military step in and?
Well, what happened was there was military trucks in front of us, behind us. There were other vehicles. There was a bus. There were several people killed on the bus. It was just a huge target. But the reality was, as soon as we started taking fire, I told the guy that was driving, which he's, it's a right-hand drive, so I'm on the left side and they're shooting at us from the left side. I said, go, go, go. So he went around and took off, and we got out ahead of everybody. So we were leading the thing at that point, and we were just driving as fast as we could, headed away from there. And then finally the military caught up with us, and there was a checkpoint at the Save River Bridge where we had to stop, and then they saw the guy on the back of the truck, and that's how that kind of went about. But it was pretty crazy. I was GoPro filming because I was making a TV show on the lion hunt, and I was doing a little bit of GoPro filming with all the military guys around and stuff, so I have some of it on video. And so that made it in the show, which was
I
kinda
got to see
cool.
that.
That's
yeah.
pretty crazy.
Do you have any? My wife's from Kyrgyzstan, and I've flown into Kyrgyzstan, and it's very some of those ex-USSR countries can be, it's very corrupt. And when they see somebody that's from out of state or somebody from out of the country that might have some money, they try to shake you down. You ever had anything like that happen in any of these countries?
Oh yeah.
Where you get bribed or you get shaken down
Mexico,
for stuff? Yeah.
I mean, no, you have that. You have that where you have to rely some on the people that you're going with. You just don't go in cold.
Yeah.
It's not like going to Kansas and trying to get permission to hunt. You know, you're going to some of these places. You've got to have some people that speak the language, know what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I went to Azerbaijan to hunt the Dagestan tur. I've been 4 times, never got one. Very difficult animal to bow hunt, especially filming. And the Russians at the border took our passports, and when we went up the mountains, I actually didn't have my passport was the Russians took it, and I was here I'm thinking here I am in Azerbaijan in the mountains, and I'm thinking what am I going to do? If I don't get my passport back.
Yeah.
But we eventually did. When we come back down the mountain, they were there and they gave us all our passports back. But it took everybody, so it was pretty crazy.
So you haven't killed that animal? The
Dagestan tur? No, I have
so
not.
is that on the list still?
I would love to get one. I don't actually have to have that one to finish what I want to do in my career, but it would be nice to get one. There's probably a handful of guys that's ever really gotten one with a bow legit.
Yeah.
Very difficult hunt, very keen animals. It's way up in the stratosphere hunting. Same with like Marco Polo sheep and things like that. But sheep are a little more herd animals and a little less. A tur actually counts for a goat and a sheep because it's such a unique animal.
Yeah.
There's 3 different subspecies of tur. The Dagestan is a unique one to get. There's a big war going on in Azerbaijan now, so you can't even go over there and hunt. It's like it's the same thing with Russia.
Yeah.
You can't hunt.
Yeah. So for my northeastern guys who listen to the podcast all the time, this will be a national podcast. But for the northeastern guys, what are your hunts in the Northeast? You've done a bull moose, or that was Saskatchewan, or where was your moose hunt?
Yeah, my moose hunts have all been out west in Western Canada.
Okay.
I haven't done a lot of hunting in the Northeast. And when I was on ESPN, that was like the #1 question that I would get. That would come in was like, why don't you do a hunt where it's hard?
Yeah.
Why don't you go to a hard place? Come up here to Maine and try to track a deer down. Or go on that Maine moose hunt, or do those hunts. And I never did. I never came up here to hunt. I'm planning on going trapping in Maine this winter.
Oh, wow!
So yeah, and I'd like to do it now. But back then, you have to understand it was a job, and it wasn't about Tom Miranda can't hunt up here. Well, it was just about me getting my shows.
Yeah.
I needed to get the best footage I could get.
Yeah.
It's not easy getting footage when it's this thick.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not like hunting out west where you can see forever.
No. It's doable, and I'm not saying that it's not worth the challenge, but at the end of the day, my show was for all across North America, and in Africa the shows were shown all on ESPN. They're shown all over. So yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I can't really stand is when hunters will pit themselves against each other and group up and say, I'm a bow hunter. I'm a better hunter than you because you're a gun hunter. Or I'm a traditional hunter, so I'm better than the compound guys, or I go out all on my own on public, you know, that whole thing. And that's one of the things that we do at Huntstock is try to get everybody together and drop egos, get together, and share in just the same shared passion. The reason we're all out here all the time is because we share the same passion of wanting to be in the outdoors, hunting, fishing, trapping, that kind of a thing. And who cares how you get it done?
Well, the reality is, and I spent my whole career teaching this, is that the people that don't want us to hunt, they don't care what we're doing. So even whatever you're doing that you think is the righteous way to do it is wrong to them.
Yep.
And so you have to, it comes back to that little mirror again.
They're united and we're bickering.
Yeah, exactly. And so no, I used to get upset with the dog hunters when I trapped because sometimes I'd catch their dogs and then they'd steal my traps. Or if I had a raccoon in a trap, they'd go let it out and then the dogs would chase it and I wouldn't get it. So, but at the same token, I didn't try to catch their dogs or shoot their dogs or do anything. I wasn't against it. And I think the key is we need to be united. In fact, a lot of the seminars that I do, I end with the fact that we need to be even more united than what we think we need to be. By what I mean by that is the farmers' unions and the grain elevators and the Ducks Unlimited and Pheasants Forever. All these organizations need to have some way to unite. The National Trappers Association with the Fur Takers of America and the Pope and Young Club with the SCI. We're all these little organizations. Fly fishermen are over here, worm fishermen are over there. We're all over the place, and we're not bringing our resources together. And the Antis is a huge group of people that every year, watch the shows. You know who makes some of the best TV commercials you can watch to earn money?
PETA?
The activist people.
Yeah.
By showing the dogs in the kennels and the cages and tethered to the chain and all the rest of it. They play on their emotions, And, those people don't understand that we could love something, but we still kill it. They don't understand
Right.
that.
That's the biggest thing they don't understand.
They don't understand. They don't understand the true meaning of conservation, So, and it's not an easy thing. I liken it, honestly, it's kind of funny, but I liken it to the abortion issue. If you're an activist, it's like you're either this or you're this. There's no like in the middle, There's nothing, and that makes it difficult. It's a hard sell, you know. You can't stand on an elevator and talk to somebody who's an activist and change their mind, You're not going to be able to do it. So we have to unite. We have the facts on our side. We have all the facts. We have all the science. So, and the reality is, you can't. Without hunters, we wouldn't have the animals we have. We really wouldn't. But they don't understand that.
Well, and the TV shows go a long way to be good public relations to the anti-hunters and that's why I think it was so brilliant that you did that in the beginning, where, you wouldn't just be hunting on your show. You're going to go do things like walk over fire or take a SWAT class, and because that might be appealing to someone, draw an audience in. Maybe it's a suburban mother or something that otherwise wouldn't be watching your show, but that kind of draws her in, and then she realizes, hey, this guy's interesting. This is a nice guy, and the way he goes about it, is ethical. And okay, maybe I'm not so against hunting as I thought I was.
Yeah. Well, you have to kind of project, this ethical, responsible, the way hunting is, you have to project that. You can't project it in a negative light, but a positive light. And so the more farmers and ranchers get behind us, the more the duck hunters get behind the bow hunters, the more we can group ourselves together. We could not only have, we have 60,000 people are members of Safari Club International. And there's, 15 million hunters plus hunters in North America. How come we don't have, Pope and Young Club? I did a seminar at Pope and Young Club, and there's 6,000 members to Pope and Young Club. There's more than 6,000 members of the Wisconsin bow hunters. So how does the National Association have less than the Wisconsin State Bow Hunters?
Yep.
So we're fragmented way too much.
Yep.
We need to get together. And it's difficult because there's so many too. Do you know how many magazines you need to get? You gotta get, the Grand Slam magazine and the Wild Sheep magazine and, SCI and, Pheasants Forever, on and on and on. Your mailbox is full and your dues are going out, know.
Yep.
So it's
a little bit of information overload and organization overload.
Absolutely.
Too many organizations. Something I brought that I forgot to pull up is I brought a couple of things. Well, of course, you know, those are walnuts where you trapped first on Walnut Creek. And
there you go.
You went to Walnut Ridge High School.
That's right.
And then what's the other thing in the bag, and what do you have to tell a story about that?
Oh, yeah, the toothpicks. So, yeah, and I was on my bighorn sheep hunt in the Canmore Bow Zone in Alberta. So you got to understand that the Canmore Bow Zone is a bow-only area for the rut of the bighorn sheep. So this is November in Canada at 10,000 feet or 9,000 and change. So what are you looking at? You know, it's like this deep of snow, steep mountains, freezing cold weather, 20 below, 30 below zero. Well, we go up there for 2 weeks to camp and hunt for bighorn sheep. And I fell down so many times, I broke all the sight pins out of my bow, falling on rocks, slipping, and eventually had to use toothpicks that we had in camp for my sight pins. I finally shot out almost on the last day.
With your toothpicks?
Yeah, with toothpicks.
And does that make one of your videos?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you're gonna have to get those on YouTube. I gotta watch them somehow. Or is that on your DVD set?
That's on the DVD set.
Okay, all right.
And on YouTube, actually.
Yep. Cool. And from when did you complete your slam? When did you complete that one?
Yeah, my desert sheep I took in May of 2011.
Okay. And since then, what have you been working on the bow hunting side?
Well, after I shot that sheep and got the slam on video, of course, we edited it together, and then it was too long, so I cut it down to 3 DVDs. So now it's only as long as the 10 Commandments, you know what I mean? But anyway, so it's a long video. But anyway, I cut out so much because it was 5 DVDs, I cut it down, so I wrote a book about it. And so it's one of the very few books that you can read that has a DVD set to go with it that has all the hunts. But the Safari Club International knew that I was traveling a lot and hunting and finished the slam, and so they came and measured my game room and talked me into going after the World Hunting Award. And I chased that for 4 years and shot that out. And then after that, I went after the World Conservation and Hunting Award, which all told was, you know, up in that 170 some species of animals. So pretty crazy.
Wow. So at that point, is that when did you start your bow camp?
My bow camp I've had for 18 years.
Okay, 18
so I've
years.
had that a long time in Africa. Yeah. I started that a long time ago when I was on ESPN. And it was great because the shows would air on ESPN and people would want to go hunt out those blinds, you know?
Yeah.
So they want to hunt out the ESPN blind or the Muzzy blind or the Rage in the Cage blind. So they're all named different things, you know? And I shot animals out of most of them, so.
You let people know that, you know, you were packing up all your game animals, and you alluded to that there was something, you were working on something kind of special that was going to happen with those. Do you have anything you can tell people about
No,
it?
I don't yet. You know, I've been trying to find a cabin that I can put my game animals in, you know, because I sold my big castle house. I had a huge house down by the Gulf of Mexico, and my parents are both still alive, and I've traveled the whole world for all these years for TV, and I decided to kind of peel back a little bit and try to spend a little bit more time with them, and it was a 3.5-hour drive. And I decided to sell that place and downsize some. My kids were all grown up, and move up there closer to them, and so I did. But I had to put all my animals in storage.
Yeah.
They're not all in storage. I've got some of them in my cottage house, but yeah, I want to try to do an Airbnb in Florida, close to the Space Center where they do all the rocket launches.
I really want to go and watch that.
Your rocket launches you can see from my house, but I'd like to be a little closer to this Kennedy Space Center, and I'd like to put all my mounts in there, and then let guys come down and stay.
That would be incredible.
So rent it for the weekend or something,
Yeah.
and then be in all my bows hanging on the wall and crazy stuff.
Yep. Oh, that would be a great thing. I've been thinking about bringing my son down there to watch some rocket launches, and been looking into that. So I mean, I'd be highly interested in that.
Absolutely.
And can you talk a little bit about your main? So when's the last time you trapped, and what are you planning on doing up in Maine trapping this year?
Well, the last videos I made was when I got on ESPN. I made one last hurrah, 2 videos for a magazine called Trapper and Predator Caller, and
in the 80s.
So that was in the 90s.
90s.
Yeah, 93, 94 was when last time I trapped, and so what was crazy was they put me in the Hall of Fame in 2021. and I hadn't trapped since 1994, so pretty crazy. But it was because of the videos, you know, and all the videos had been, you know, it had been really a boon. It's a big deal now that, you know, trapping lessons on video and stuff, and now on YouTube, a lot of trapping stuff on there. But I've always wanted to, I never got to trap. I trapped in the North Woods in Michigan, but I never got to trap any martins, or there's some animals that I never got to catch, like pine martins and fishers. I never got to trap like that. So I'd like to go up to Maine, and I want to make some videos on it and put them on YouTube.
Any plans to do that?
Yeah. Then I'm taking my camera gear and some trail cameras to see if I can't get some trail camera footage of some martins getting caught in some box traps and stuff like that.
Well, that's awesome. That's exciting news, I'm sure, for a lot of people. I don't know if you've told anybody about that yet.
No, I haven't. So yeah, the news flash, you know.
Yeah.
Martin trapping on, hopefully I can get some good camera footage of it.
Oh, absolutely. So as a person who's constantly building your resume, we're getting close to the end probably of this battery here. As somebody who's always building your resume, always looking for something else to conquer, looking for another peak to climb, here we are on the top of Killington Peak. What is next for Tom Miranda?
Well, I need 2 goats and 6 sheep to finish the Pantheon Award with Grand Slam Club, which is the pinnacle bow hunting award that you could accomplish. I have 10 of the 12 goats required for the Capra World Slam, and 6 of the 12 sheep. It's an expensive undertaking. I've got a trip to Pakistan booked for 2 of the sheep and 1 of the goats. So if that goes well, it's an expensive trip. If that goes well, then I'll probably try to continue to push on for it. But as I get older every year, the mountains get tougher. Yeah. Even climbing up to Kensington Peak, it gets tough. But anyway, you got to be. Sheep hunting is kind of unique because when you're young and tough, you can't afford to go, you know? Yeah. And when you get older and you can afford to go, you're too old to climb to the top, you know what I mean? But I was able to get 6 of them so far, and if I could get 6 more, that would be great. Yeah, that would be, there's 2 bow hunters that have the Pantheon Award, Archie Nesbitt, a Canadian hunter from Calgary, and Gary Bogner from Michigan, who's a very well-known bow hunter from back in the day. So, yeah, I'd like to be number 3 if I could.
And try to film it all again, get it all.
Well, I have everything else. So, I have all the other hunts.
Are there hunts that you haven't put out on DVD? That are in the can that if you complete all this, it'll come out?
Yeah, they'll probably end up on YouTube. The DVD thing's kind of worn itself out.
Yeah.
You know? It's hard to even get them pressed anymore.
Well, you could do a couple, at least limited edition ones. People would buy them. You print up 1,000 of them, they'll be gone.
Oh, yeah.
You know? Well, I think, do you have anything else you want to leave for the people before we
I
enjoy the sunset here?
You know, there's so many fascinating places in the world, and you know, when a lot of people think of New England, they think of New York City and Boston and all that, but gosh, you get up here and, I mean, we're in Vermont right now, and the mountains is just beautiful, you know, and we've had a little breeze for the last 90 minutes, but...
Pat's freezing his nipples off.
Yeah. Cameraman's a little bit worked over here, but anyway, you know, the outdoors is an amazing place, and it's been an incredible career for me, and it's been a lot of business for me, but it's been a passion, and if I could give anybody any advice, it would be to follow your passion, you know, whatever that passion is in life, and if you can learn to make anything and everything your passion, it makes it a whole lot easier to live a fulfilling life, that's for sure. Have a passion to make your bed in the morning and take out the trash if you're a youngster. Have a passion to make your mom happy, you know, and your dad proud. I think if you can have those types of, you know, goals and you know, things come a lot easier. And, you know, even climbing the mountain, you know, climbing the mountain can be tough on a sheep hunt, but if it was easy, everybody'd have one. Everybody'd have the Grand Slam if it was easy. The same thing bow hunting, you know. It's a lot easier with a rifle. Still hard, but it's a lot easier with a rifle. But with a bow, you know, you're making a conscious decision to make it harder than it needs to be. Sure, great to be on your podcast. Thank you very much.
I enjoyed it very much, and I appreciate you coming up.
All right, buddy.
Let's go get some dinner a little bit later.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.